one of the a good section of the GS2 paper, that is the international relations. International relations. There is one beauty of the UPSC mains examination paper, that they ask the question as per the syllabus. If international relations is mentioned in last in syllabus, in your examination paper also, they will ask the questions on international relations in the last few questions, right? So, and apart from that, it has like 1/4 to 1/3, or sometimes maybe 1/5 weightage in this GS2 paper, right? So it is very important, and sometimes few international relations topics also coincided with the post-independence history as well as the world history as well. For example, the topic of NAM, non-alignment movement, that can be included in the world history, that can be included in the right post-independence history of India, and that can be included in the international relations of GS2 paper. So in that way also, sometimes these international relations take the weightage more than that is mentioned in GS2 paper, right? So it's a very, and apart from that, in prelim examination as well, there are many questions based on international relations, right? So we'll start this from the 3 phases of India's foreign policies. We divide these international relations. First of all, if you will see the syllabus, just a second. Yes. So if you will see the syllabus of international relations, what kind of things they had mentioned? They had mentioned India and its neighborhood relations, whereby we cover generally India and its 8 neighbor countries, you can say SAARC. India's relations with the SAARC in general, and with each and every country particularly. For example, with the relation with Nepal, Bangladesh, or Pakistan, or Sri Lanka, like that. Then bilateral, regional, and global groupings and agreements involving India or affecting India's interests. Bilateral relations like India's relation with any other country like Japan or USA or Australia or these kind of things. Or regional or global groupings. Global groupings, you can say like United Nations Security Council issue, or these kind of issues you can say. For global groupings, you can include like G20, these kind of groupings you can include, right? And apart from that, regional groupings as well. For example, we have included the SAARC, and then we have the other groupings like BIMSTEC, right? And apart from that, agreements and all these things. Then effects of policies and politics of development and developing countries on India's interests. And then suppose, there was an issue of CAMPA, that if USA has changed one particular policy with respect to, right, favoring or disfavoring India, then it also impacts on India, right? In that way also what is happening, and it's related to the current affair only, strictly telling you. This whole international relations topic is based on the current affairs. Apart from that, Indian diaspora, that is also specifically mentioned, and the role of Indian diaspora. And then important international institutions like WHO. WHO is very important institution that can be asked in current years, right? Likewise, like there is a IMF, there is a World Bank, there is any other institution. And in global groupings like UNFCCC, these are very important things which we already discussed. So now this is the broad syllabus, but before discussing these things, first of all, what is our strategy to go with international relations? First of all, we are going to discuss the historical background of India's foreign policy in general, starting from 1947. What exactly happened, how India has changed its foreign policy till this date. After discussing the three phases in which India has changed its foreign policy, then we'll come to India's relations with neighborhoods and the neighborhood countries, and then we'll discuss certain global groupings as well as the bilateral relations with certain countries, which are important for our examination, not for each and every country. And then we are going to proceed with any other issue that could have the impact on India's interests. Then we'll discuss the Indian diaspora specifically. And then we'll go with certain other institutions, right? Like we can discuss G20 or any other important institutions that could be important for our examination. So that would be our scheme to go do with this syllabus. So first of all, what I'm going to discuss here, historical background in the form of three phases of India's foreign policy starting from the 1947, right? And it will be very much help. And certain things we already discussed in the post-independence history, right? Like Korean War, that is we have discussed already in the post-independence history, right? That won't be repeated in this particular discussion. I will mention that it is already discussed, right? So without wasting time, we'll start our discussion with the historical background in the form of three phases of India's foreign policy. So first phase was idealistic phase. First phase was idealistic phase from 1947 to 62 to 1947 to 1962. You can write down. The beginning of Indian independence era. The beginning of Indian independence era, era, and start of Cold War, were coincided. These two events coincided. Neither the Soviet Union nor USA, neither the Soviet Union nor USA had shown any great interest in India. Had shown any great interest in India at the onset of Cold War. At the onset of Cold War. The United States or USA was virtual ignorant about India and had few cultural, strategic, or economic links with the nascent nation Similarly, the Soviet Union did not attach any strategic significance to India. Similarly, the Soviet Union did not attach any strategic significance to India. So first of all, we'll talk about the paragraph that we have written. And the name of this phase was idealistic phase. First of all, I will talk about that why this phase is known as idealistic phase. This phase was idealistic phase because, for last 200 years, we were colonized by the Britishers. And they had made tremendous exploitation in our country. They had ruined our industries, they had ruined our agriculture in every way, they had ruined our whole country. There was drain of wealth and all these things happened. So India was very, cautious about each and everything, that what is happening in this world after getting independent and what we should do. So the leaders like Jawaharlal Nehru, who was the Prime Minister of our country, these people came from the national freedom struggle movement. And particularly the Nehru was kind of idealistic person. He was less pragmatic, but more idealistic, you can say. And it has been happened throughout our this foreign relations history or foreign policy history, that the foreign policy in India largely depends on the personality of the Prime Minister. Right? If Nehru is idealistic, then his foreign policy would be also idealistic. So the period when we got the independence in 1947, we know that by the 1945, this Second World War was ended. And when the Second World War was ended in 1945, then there was a formation of United Nations as well. But after that, two major players came into picture after the Second World War. One was USA and other was Soviet Union. And this was the era when there was start of the Cold War. But both these countries, both Soviet Union and USA, had a little interest in India. They have never shown a particular interest in India. Right? So India was also very cautious that how to deal with all these things, right? And as I told you that India followed the idealistic approach towards its foreign policy, and that is why it disregarded the militarization and this Cold War and all these things, right? And that is why India also do not want it to align to anybody, whether it's a USA, whether it's a Soviet Union, right? So you can write down from next line, at a national level, comma, the memories of colonial rule developed a perception in the minds of our policy makers to go with national autonomy. to go with national autonomy. इसको underline कर लेना आप लोग, national autonomy. This was the reason they chose to keep India outside the ambit of Cold War. To keep India outside the ambit of Cold War. Anti-imperialist sentiments were widespread among Indians. So what we are saying that in this British colonial rule, there was a drain of wealth, and we was very skeptical about these Western countries. We did not want to be to be used by these Western countries in their interests. So one thing was very clear in the minds of our Indian leaders, that we will work with the national autonomy, and we will truly become a sovereign country, not to be controlled by anyone, right? Now, these two blocks, because this was the time of bipolar world. Cold War was a time of bipolar world. Bipolar means on one side there was a USA and other side there was a USSR. They had started making their groupings, like USA had made NATO. Military groupings, they had started making like SEATO. These kind of groups they had created. Like USSR made a Warsaw Pact. All these things we already discussed in post-independence history. As well as the world history also, we have seen all these things. So these kind of groupings started to make, and India refused to join any of these groupings because India asserted its independence. But the country like Pakistan, it had joined this grouping, SEATO, and it aligned towards the USA. And USA started its free food and aid program for the underdeveloped countries. And Pakistan took a side with the USA, and USA in return had provided the free aid and food to Pakistan. But India thought that we would create our own industry and we would become developed, because at that time the definition of development was industrialization. Because everybody thought that these USA and all these European countries were developed just because of one thing, that is the industrialization. So India thought that we will do our own industrialization. And they never joined these two groupings. So many events happened in this particular phase. You can write down the heading that important events of this phase. Important events of this phase. First particular event that occurred was non-alignment movement. Non-alignment movement. And each and every thing that we are discussing, like non-alignment movement or any other event, there could be a question on each and every event, right, in your examination. So first of all, what is the meaning of the non-alignment? So you can write down. The non-alignment means being neutral to USA and Soviet Union. To USA and Soviet Union. which were major players of bipolar world, as well as Cold War, as well as Cold War. The movement originated in 1950s by agreeing principles at by agreeing principles at the Bandung Conference. In 1955, the non-alignment movement was established in 1961 in Belgrade, Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia is a country and Belgrade is a place. Through an initiative of Indian Prime Minister, Indian PM Jawaharlal Nehru or JL Nehru, Ghanaian President Kwame Nkrumah, NKRUMAH, Indonesian President Sukarno, Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser, NASSER, and Yugoslavia President Josip Broz Tito, TITO. So this non-alignment movement was started by these third world countries. And what is the meaning of third world countries? The countries which were underdeveloped, right? Third world countries, that means which were colonized countries, colonized by their European masters, right? Or any other Western master. So these third world countries thought that we should be neutral. We should not be, not all countries, but yes, few of these countries. They thought that we should be neutral. We should not be sided with the USA or USSR. And these were the people, and the Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru had also prominent role for the creation of this non-alignment movement. So what is the purpose of non-alignment movement? They wanted to be neutral. They do not want it to join any of these bloc, right? And in fact, what I said, that the first conference was held in Bandung, right, in 1955, whereby they talked about the 10 principles. And if you want to see what are those 10 principles, you can search on Google as well, Wikipedia. They will tell you the 10 principles that they had mentioned in Bandung conference. After that, in 1961, they had formalized the non-alignment movement. That means this non-alignment movement was, or NAM. This non-alignment movement is also called NAM, was established. Now, why I'm not discussing these 10 principles here in the Badung conference? Because rather than these 10 principles, the 5 principles are more important that they had adopted from Indian this Panchshil doctrine, right? And that is why now we'll discuss these 5 principles of peaceful coexistence. You can write down from next line. This movement adopted 5 principles of peaceful coexistence. Peaceful coexistence, इसको अंडरलाइन कर लो, which are also called Panchshil. Already there was not one time, many times there was a question on Panchshil doctrine or Panchshil in mains examination GS2 paper in international relations, which are also called Panchshil, in bracket 5 restraints. And one more thing I want to tell you, that each and every word which I'm giving you, right, is important for the examination. Don't think like that I can skip something from these notes. You can't. And I will teach only those things which are important for the examination. So Panchshil in bracket 5 restraints for Sino-Indian relations. For Sino-Indian relations. For Sino-Indian relations. What we are saying? That we had adopted this doctrine of Panchshil with respect to China. Sino means China. And the same doctrine that we had adopted with respect to China, that is Panchshil or the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence, were adopted by the NAM as well, right? So now we'll see what were these 5 principles. First is the mutual respect for each other's territorial integrity. And sovereignty. Secondly, mutual non-aggression. Third, mutual non-interference in domestic affairs. Mutual non-interference in domestic affairs. Fourthly, equality and mutual benefit. Fifth, peaceful coexistence. So Jawaharlal Nehru came out with this Panchshil doctrine with respect to China, to have peaceful relationship with China, because India and China were these 2 big players in this particular Asian continent, you can say, right? And that is why everybody was skeptical about these 2 countries, and they thought that we should have peaceful relations. And their political ideologies were also different. Chinese followed the communist, as you know, and we had adopted the democratic structure in our country, right? And that is why everybody wanted that, like, these 2 countries have peaceful relations. So that is why Jawaharlal Nehru gave this doctrine with respect to China. And these principles are, although self-understood, but still, in briefly, I will tell you that mutual respect for each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty. That means you cannot intrude in any other's border. You cannot occupy the area of any other's country. For example, when China intruded in the Doklam, that is the tri-junction of India, that is Sikkim, Nepal, and China, right? It is can be termed as like it is the breach of the first principle of the Panchshil. You can put that example like in that way. Like secondly, the mutual non-aggression, right? The breach of LAC that was made so many times with respect to China we are talking about, or LOC with respect to Pakistan, that is could be called as the aggression, an act of aggression. Then mutual non-interference in domestic affairs. So suppose because J&K is a part of India, and if we have any concern about the Jammu and Kashmir and or Arunachal Pradesh, because China is doing that, they are putting the sanctions with respect to the people of Arunachal Pradesh, or like that. They are putting the wrong maps as well. All these are things like they are interfering with our domestic affairs. And then equality and mutual benefit. That means they should not disfavor India and favoring any other nation with respect to any their policy. That is meant they need to show the equality, both of these countries, India and China. And then peaceful coexistence, right? Because as we know that these are two big players, and that is why they should be remain there with the peaceful measures. Like with the again we have example like India China have good economic relations. The trade was like more than $60 billion or $80 billion kind of that kind of trade was there. So definitely we lived for so many years after 1962 with peaceful coexistence. There is a aggression on the Pakistan, this LOC with Pakistan, but there are less cases of aggression with China. That means yes, this doctrine worked in some way with having established peaceful coexistence with China. So these kind of examples you can mention one by one. Now the same kind of principle they had adopted with the NAM countries, that first of all the member countries of the NAM, they should adopt these principles, and they also asked the other countries to adopt these principles as well. And these principles are making sense for USA and the Soviet Union as well, that they should not they should respect these Panchshil principles, because after all this NAM was formed with the objective of being neutral towards the Cold War. Now you can write down from next line. Currently, it has 120 members. Currently, it has 120 members. The last summit, that is 18th summit, was held in Baku, Azerbaijan, 2019, October 2019. Now, what kind of question they can ask in your examination? Because, you know, in 1991, USSR was disintegrated, as you know. And after 1991, the world became unipolar from bipolar. And the only major unipolar means only one major player remained, that was USA. But after 2000s, the world transformed from unipolar to multipolar. So this Cold War was ended in 1991. So now what is, because you know NAM was formed against the Cold War. Do we have any relevance of this movement or this organization, that is the NAM, non-alignment movement, after 1991? If we have relevance, then how? That is my question. Yes, anybody? And there is a heavy chance that this question can be asked in GS2 paper in international relations. Yes, do we need this kind of organization, or India should abandon the NAM, or the whole NAM should abandon itself?
It is a symbol of India's leadership that
Mhm.
Indian diplomacy worked and is still working.
No, but only for, we cannot have just because of museum thing, right? If it doesn't have utility, it should be abandoned. It has utility, then it should be continued. Now, if you want that it should be continued, then there must be utility. What is that utility?
So through this, India can play a role of world leader. Like recently, there was a meeting of NAM countries, and all the health ministers of these countries participated for countering COVID-19 situation.
Mhm.
Like these.
Yes. Well, this kind of example you can give definitely. One thing you need to remember, particularly in the international relations, facts are very important. If you're justifying the point with your points with facts, then only the examiner would have good impact. Then only your answer would have good impact. As you said that India could act as a world leader like that, then you need to justify your point in international relations, particularly. This is the thing. And then you give the example like recent meeting was held. This was a correct thing that you're doing. That should be continued. So well, we will see that what we need to write. Just a second, coming. So well, you can write down in say first of all you write down question, right? In post Cold War period, in post Cold War period, NAM has lost its relevance. Its relevance. Do you agree? Do you agree? Justify your answer with examples. Justify your answer with examples. This is the suppose mains question that you need to write. You can write down the answer. In post-Cold War period, NAM had redefined and reinvented. NAM had redefined and reinvented its role to the current world. So what we are saying that अभी इसको ध्यान से समझना आप लोग. We have said that why NAM was created. What was the purpose? Being neutral in Cold War situation. We are saying that this thing is not there. Cold War is not there, and that is why NAM is not there. And what is this? This is purpose or objective of NAM. Because the objective is not there, the objective is vanished. That is why NAM should be vanished. And what we are writing in answer, that what NAM did, if this objective has been vanished, it has chosen another objective. It has chosen another objective. That is why we have written that it had redefined or reinvented its role or purpose or objective, right? And now what kind of change in objective is there that we will mention? That is the center point of the answer. In the Cold War period, what was the objective of NAM? Objectives were like national independence, national independence. Next, territorial integrity. Struggle against इसको ऑब्जेक्टिव ना लिख के रोल भी लिख सकते हो आप लोग. व्हाट वर द रोल्स इन कोल्ड वॉर पीरियड? स्ट्रगल अगेंस्ट colonialism and imperialism. Colonialism and imperialism. These were the old objectives. And what were the new objectives or new roles? After the end of Cold War. Principle of multilateralism. Principles of multilateralism. Equality. Mutual non-aggression. Mutual non-aggression. Next, advancement of interests of developing and underdeveloped countries. and underdeveloped countries. Underdeveloped countries. Next, to work against neo-imperialism and neo-colonialism. Neo-imperialism and neo-colonialism. Neo-imperialism and neo-colonialism. And one more thing that I want to tell you, that in your answer writing, there is no particular, I can say this is a method to write this answer. The answer which is very conceptual. First of all, the concept, the maximum marks are given to the concepts, that this person is conceptually clear, right? Secondly, the language should be simple. It should not be complicated, right? Why will write this like what I used, like this old roles, new roles? I mean, it's very simple in way I'm writing the only in the point format, right? The thing is that you should not complicate your answer. It should be understandable to the examiner. And यदि आप लोग जैसे मैंने डायग्राम बना के आपको बता रहा था, like these were the नाम, old objectives are not there, it are vanishes, new roles they had adopted, which provided say new identity. These kind of things you can use, these kind of flow charts in your examination to explain your point to your examiner. There is nothing wrong, right? So what we have said that earlier the objectives were like national independence, like we would be independent and we won't make an alignment with the USA or USSR. Then territorial integrity, that no other country could intrude the integrity, because all these third world countries that joined the NAM, they were earlier colonized countries. They fought against the colonialism and the imperialism. So the same objective they had achieved in this NAM or role, you can say. But now there is no colonialism. Now there is no imperialism. That era has ended. Now there is no Cold War. Then, okay. But if these things are not there, but other things are there for which NAM can be used. And what are these things? For example, there is a tendency of one player that is dominating over others. For example, we will take the example of China, that is dominating in the Southeast Asia. And they are saying that whole South China Sea is mine. These kind of things are happening, right? So NAM had adopted the principle of multilateralism that should be understood to each and every player. In fact, Narendra Modi also gave the same statement in his speech with respect to China. He said that countries or they need to understand that this world is a multipolar world, and we should accept the principle of multilateralism. And the same principle was adopted by the NAM now. Another function is the equality. And as we know that inequality are on rise, right? With respect to the regional inequalities, within country also the inequalities on rise. So NAM is working for the equality. And not only in that, for example, in the international organizations as well. For example, you can take the example of IMF. In IMF, there is a dominance of the Western countries. So NAM countries, which mostly represent the poor countries, they collectively can have the bargain power to increase their representation in the IMF. That is the principle of equality. Otherwise, what is right now structure of IMF? There is a veto power. And it is based on the fund that any country gives to the IMF. That means they are violating the principle of equality. So NAM had suggested that these kind of organizations like World Bank, IMF, there should be equality. Apart from that, like mutual non-aggression. Still, earlier there was a Cold War, that's a different thing, but even now there is a mutual aggression. Every time you can see that Israel is throwing bombs on the Iran, and the like Saudi Arabia versus Iran, and North Korea versus South Korea, and so many aggression, India, Pakistan. Then advancement of interests of developing and underdeveloped countries. Still, For these countries, for example, India had started the Solar Alliance. How it could easily start the Solar Alliance and how it could able to ratify that convention, just because it had already the members of NAM and already had the mutual trust in the form of NAM. That is why we had easily able to implement these kind of alliances, because there is already a strong bonding in NAM. Next, to work against neo-imperialism and neo-colonialism. Okay, we agree that now there is no colonialism, no imperialism of the same style. There is no direct acquisition of countries, but it had changed its form. Still, imperialism and colonialism are there, but in the form of neo-imperialism and neo-colonialism. अभी आप लोग एग्जांपल दो. First of all, neo-imperialism. Obviously, in your examination, you need to justify with examples.
Belt Road Initiative.
Yes, can you please read?
Belt Road Initiative of China.
Okay. You know, one more thing. This Belt Road Initiative is an example of neo-imperialism as well as neo-colonialism. How? Because it is making a highway, it is making railroads in POK, and it is occupying the Gwadar port. China is occupying the Gwadar port. So it's a physical acquisition as well. It is using the assets of that country as well as the resources. So it is an example of neo-imperialism as well as neo-colonialism. Any other example? Neo-imperialism or colonialism? किसी का भी example दो.
So like recently China won Bangladesh against joining Quad.
Against?
Joining of Quad group.
Joining of Quad. Yes. That you can perhaps can ask, like neo-imperialism is there.
The whole thing in the South China Sea by China.
That is also neo-colonialism, you can say, yes. Hambantota port of the Sri Lanka that was constructed by China. There are so many other examples, right? In fact, what Israel is doing in the form of in the Palestine and all these things, and there are USA also putting the sanctions on the countries, you know, and is dominating. All these kind of examples of neo-imperialism. There are certain other examples as well, because you know, imperialism, you can have some economic things also you can include. For example, unhealthy competitions, like suppose the dominance of Google. That is also an example of neo-imperialism, right? So you can include these kind of examples as well. So whatever, because these things are there, because still there is a aggression, still there is a neo-imperialism, neo-colonialism, all these things are there. That is why NAM has relevance. Certainly it has relevance, but just it has changed its objectives or roles. Now, you will justify your points that it has relevance by giving the facts that what NAM has done to overcome these problems, or how it had performed its roles, right? So you can put the heading current activities of NAM. It had done with respect to new roles it had adopted. Because without giving facts, for this part specifically, your answer is incomplete, I can say. International relations में आपको particularly facts की जरूरत होती है. Current activities में लिखो आप लोग. First point, I'm giving you few activities, you can search your own, right? Criticism of US policy. Criticism of US policy. Like 2003 invasion of Iraq. Like 2003 invasion of Iraq and the war on terrorism. And the war on terrorism, because it amounts to neo-imperialism and neo-colonialism. Definitely, that is why they had criticized it. Secondly, self-determination of, second example is self-determination of Puerto Rico. Self-determination of Puerto Rico. Have you heard of this name, Puerto Rico? Okay. Well, I would say that it is an island, first of all, nearby USA, and USA exerted its dominance over this island. And these people of this island do not have the voting rights in USA, but USA still administratively dominating in this area. And this area exacting its independence. This kind of things are there. So you can write down a resolution in United Nations. A resolution in United Nations regarding self-determination. Again, it is an example of neocolonialism. Self-determination of an island was supported by NAM countries. So in this NAM platform, they had all of them, they have decided that we will support the cause of Puerto Rico. Next, self-determination of Western Sahara. Like Puerto Rico, Western Sahara also asserted its autonomy. Self-determination of Western Sahara. Next, adherence towards sustainable development. Adherence towards sustainable developments and attainment of sustainable development goals. Next, reforms in international institutions. Like United Nations Security Council, UNSC, IMF, World Bank, etc. They demanded these reforms in these international organizations collectively. Now, cultural diversity, working for cultural diversity and human rights. Next, calling for disarmament of nuclear weapons. Next, online summit was held in 2020. Online summit was held in 2020 with the title United Against, इसको नोटेड कॉमर्स में कर लो, United Against COVID-19. So these are a few examples by which you can definitely justify that there is a relevance of NAM. Okay. अब इसमें क्रिटिसिज्म मत करना आप लोग नाम का, जस्ट इंट्रोडक्शन में ऐसा लिखना आप लोग दैट जो क्वेश्चन में लिखा गया दैट whether it's lost relevance or not. In introduction you will say that like इस तरह से आप लिख सकते हो like because the purpose of NAM was to being neutral with respect to the Cold War, right? And because of there is no Cold War right now, because that era has been ended, this colonization and the imperialism and this Cold War era was ended, and that is why certain people asked the relevance of the NAM, and they thought that NAM has lost relevance. But contradictorily, NAM has not really lost its relevance. In fact, it has changed it's reinvented or revised its purposes. Then आप start कर लो अपने आंसर को, right? तो एक तरह से आप लोगों ने वो आर्गुमेंट दे दिया कि क्यों उसको रिलेवेंस खत्म होने की बात कर रहे हैं, एंड देन उसके साथ आप लोगों ने अपना स्टैंड भी चेंज कर लिया और उसके बाद आप लोगों ने अपना जस्टिफिकेशन दिया. Now you can write down conclusion as well. Overall, we can say that और ये जो कंक्लूजन होता है जैसे कि अपने लॉस्ट रिलेवेंस को लॉस्ट नहीं किया, ये आप लास्ट में लिखो, हमेशा इंट्रोडक्शन में नहीं लिखना आप लोगों को that NAM has not lost its relevance. We can say that NAM has not lost. जो भी आपको कंक्लूजन निकालना है या वो आपको इंट्रोडक्शन में कभी भी कंक्लूड नहीं करना आप लोगों को, ये याद रखना आप लोग. NAM has not lost its relevance, but only reinvented its role. NAM countries represent underdeveloped and developing countries. Collectively, they had good bargain powers. In international platforms. They have good bargain powers in international platforms. Apart from this, NAM also ensured the mutual cooperation and collective efforts to further interests of member states in specific and human rights in general. So इस तरह से like एक diplomatic and in fact in optimistic mode you need to conclude, right? So I think it would be a good answer if you write in this way, but you should be conceptually very correct. अभी generally होता क्या कि like that the students that write the answer, they give the random points without any structure, without any conceptual clarity, and that is why they do not get good marks. And every student claims that like I filled the page, like each and every page, still I'm got the marks like 60 or 70 or maybe 80 marks out of 250. Why? This is the reason. Concept, right? Second event apart from the NAM in this particular phase, membership of Commonwealth. Membership of Commonwealth. At the time of independence, there was widespread distrust. At the time of independence, there was widespread distrust of Britain. अब ये इश्यू का कंटेक्स्ट क्या मैं आपको बता देता हूं. आफ्टर द इंडिपेंडेंस, Indian independence, UK had created one organization named as Commonwealth. And UK desired to, because, UK had the maximum colonies, as we know. So UK desired that to bring each and every colony under the group of Commonwealth nations. They said that, and this group was made by the UK only, and they said that I want to have foreign relations with these countries in future, and in fact these Commonwealth nations would make a mutual interactions as well. For example, there is a Commonwealth Games by which each and every country can participate, which were the previously colonies of the UK, right? But India was skeptical whether to join Commonwealth or whether not to join Commonwealth. This was debated, this was discussed in our parliament. So this event or issue is related to that only. And why we have joined? What was the reason? What was the skepticism? That we'll see. At the time of independence, there was widespread distrust of Britain. Popular grievances included the British UN delegation, openly supported Pakistan on Kashmir issue. Pakistan on Kashmir issue. Pakistan on Kashmir issue. Britain was providing military advice to Pakistan. Britain was providing military advice to Pakistan, and UK was also supporting the Dutch efforts, Dutch efforts to crush Indonesian nationalism. The Dutch efforts to crush Indonesian nationalism. So, what we said, that why we are so much there's so much skepticism against this joining of Commonwealth. Two major grievances we have discussed here. One was like that Britain was supporting Pakistan and giving military advice to Pakistan as well. Right? That means, in fact, this whole partition of the India and Pakistan was planned by Britain. So India was, suspicious about the activities of the Britain. Secondly, with respect to for example, in Indonesia, there was Dutch rule, and there was Dutch areas, certain areas, and these regions, Indonesia wanted to exert its independence from the Dutch. But UK supported the Dutch rather than supporting the Indonesia. So these things are very much clear that still their intentions are not good. The intentions of Britain are not good. And that is why this issue was very much debated and discussed in Indian Parliament. And then why we finally joined? What do you think that why it could be? Any reasoning? Yes, anybody? So you can write down from next line. At this time, Commonwealth was most debating topic, most debated topic. As nowadays we have debates on COVID-19 or other things, Shine Bagh or whatever. At that time, this was also most debated topic. But India, under the leadership of, PM Nehru, decided to join Commonwealth. Because of following reasons. First, it was a large group of third world nations. With common interests. Secondly, known membership would leave Pakistan in a stronger position. Next, need for American and UK help in terms of aid, loans and trade. In terms of aid, loans and trade. So these were three important reasons because of which India joined Commonwealth. First was that it was a large group, third world nations, and India wanted to get the benefit of this large group. India could not leave, not to join. I mean, if there are more than 100 nations which are joining the Commonwealth, by refusing this group, that means we do not have that advantage of being in the group and have the mutual relationship with these countries. Secondly, and in fact, in this group, there were neighboring countries as well. For example, Burma was there, which is now Myanmar, Sri Lanka, and all these countries, with which India wanted to have good relations. And at that time, there was no regional groups like SAARC and all these things. Secondly, Pakistan would be an advantage. If India is not joining, Pakistan certainly joining the Commonwealth. And it would have good relations with the Western countries as well as the neighboring countries and the third world nations. Thirdly, because America and the UK started some relief or the aid programs or loans programs, right? British also started giving the 0% interest rate loans to its, those countries which were colonized by the Britain. So, which are part of the Commonwealth nations. And at that time, India wanted these kind of cheap loans. Apart from that, because USA and UK both had strategically they were both had on one side, and that is why. And USA also had started the food program, food relief program. And I hope that you know what is the code of that program, or what kind of program it was. Anybody who remembers? We have read all these things in world history and post-independence history as well.
Is it PL 480?
PL 480, definitely. So India wanted to get this relief also. That is why also they had joined the Commonwealth group, right? There were other events that were occurred. For example, there was India's peace efforts. Third event was India's peace efforts in Korean Peninsula. And certainly we have read in the world history. We already read this event in world history, whereby India was a major player to establish the peace in North Korea and South Korea, right? And fourth one is the pathway to 1962. To 1962. Obviously, we are talking about 1962 war. This war we have already discussed in post-independence history, but we are discussing the foreign policies at that time which led to this war, where India had, what kind of weaknesses were there in India's foreign policy, that we were not only indulged in the war, we also get defeated by the China. So that analysis we will make in next class, right? That what kind of foreign policy Jawaharlal Nehru adopted and what was its consequences, right? So if anybody has any doubt regarding anything, you can ask me right now. Yes. Well, if there is no, then we'll end our this class here only. And today there is no public administration class. Okay, today there is off for public administration class, and tomorrow there is a test for public administration, right? For those students who are joined this public administration course. And apart from that, we had GS test as well. And in next class, that is in Monday's class, we will discuss that test, right? And if anybody student has not submitted its answer copy, they can, but definitely by Monday we'll definitely able to discuss the test as well as you'll be able to get your answer copies as well. So this is it with this class.